Today, we are delighted to have a special guest in Frank Stampfl of CBS to discuss what players we think will bust in 2025 on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit the little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side, on Apple or Spotify, that allows 5-star ratings or reviews. We would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And lastly, most importantly to us and you guys this time of year, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute episode. And as always, I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. And today we are, as I said at the top, delighted to have a special guest in Frank Stampfl. And Frank, I'm sure everybody knows who you are at this point in time. But if they don't, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself to everybody and let them know where they could find your work.
Yes, so thanks for having me, guys. I am the host of the CBS Fantasy Baseball Today podcast. We also have a shorter 10-minute podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today Express. You can find me hosting both of those podcasts. Things are starting to ramp up. We're about a month out from pitchers and catchers, spring training, getting ready to start up. But as of now, we've got like 3 podcasts per week in January. And then once we get to February, it's 5 days a week until the end of the season, September. So yeah, if you listen to Fantasy Baseball Today, that's pretty much where you can find me on Twitter at Roto_Frank. Thanks, guys.
And of course, thank you, Frank, for taking the time to do this with us today. And real quick, though, guys, from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are back and better with FanDuel. New customers can get $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And all right, I did mention at the top, today we are going to talk about a few players that we think will bust. Matt, I don't know if you want to break a little bit down here about anything, and then maybe we'll pass it off to Frank.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, like, you look at, what is a bust, right? And a bust is essentially, are you going to get that ROP, so return on pick? And, are they going to essentially be able to be valuable after drafting them? Or is there other guys around them that you probably should be looking at and kind of avoiding based off of draft price? So we got a list of guys here that essentially we probably want to avoid just based off of their draft price. You guys may feel different, but these are guys we're generally just avoiding. So,
all right. With that being said, Frank, as our honored guest today, why don't you start us off? I know you threw us a couple of names, and I know at the top, we're all New York guys here. So when I saw this one come across, it was an interesting name, and I think you threw Jazz Chisholm out at us. So why don't you start off by talking a little bit about Jazz and why you think he has a chance at busting this year?
I feel obligated to tell you guys that I have moved to New Jersey since the last time we recorded. So okay. I don't want to come across as a New York fraud. I don't know if I could claim New York anymore. Of course,
Frank, I think we'll give you the New York pass. You were here for long enough. I think you're honorary at least.
I spent most of my life in New York, so I guess it's all right. I am a Yankee fan. And this one hurts me to say. I love the player. There's no doubt. Like, one of the most electric players in all of baseball is Jazz Chisholm. I have his Marlins jersey. I was ecstatic when the Yankees traded for him. Love the player. Don't love the cost this year in fantasy baseball drafts. If you look at the NFBC ADP, he's going right around pick 25, 26. So he's a late second, early third round pick. And he was awesome last year, but it just feels like a boom bust player. I like to draft those types of players more so in the middle or late rounds, not in the early rounds of my drafts. I generally try to play it as safe as possible. You look at what Jazz did last year. He stayed healthy for the first time in his career. 147 games was a career high for him. He set career highs across the board. He got even better once he went to the Yankees last season. In 46 games with them, he had 11 home runs, 18 steals. That is a full season pace of 38 home runs, 63 steals. Now, I don't think anyone's expecting that. But in his 99th percentile outcome, that could be the highest end of his upside. The downside is that he's been injured for a lot of his career. So he's only played more than 124 games once in his career. That was last season. He also dealt with a sprained UCL in his elbow last year. Once he returned from that, he did not hit well in the month of September, did not hit well in the postseason, has struggles against lefties in his career. So I love watching the guy. You know, if he's a 4th, 5th round pick, something like that, I think it's easier to stomach. But when you tell me he's a late 2nd, early 3rd round pick in a 12-team league, I'll pass on that and I'll let someone else, take the high risk, high reward in a Jazz Chisholm.
Honestly, well said. I don't really have much to really add to that other than, I just can't trust him either. It just is one of those guys that just isn't for me, and the price is just outrageous. So well done.
Yeah, Frank, just as an outfielder number one, can't do it. I was talking to Matt a little bit before, we hopped on here. I could do it as an outfielder number two. He would make a great outfielder number two. If you had a solid outfielder number one, you could get Jazz as your number two. That'd be amazing. Just can't pay the price as an outfielder number one. And once again, Frank, great breakdown there on Jazz. Matt, why don't you jump in? I know you had a fun name up next too, right, brother?
Yeah, and I'm going to get the hate because he's on the Houston Astros, and that's Jose Altuve. But the thing about Jose Altuve is, one, I just don't think that he's got it the way he's been the last couple of years. Coming off the board at pick 58, basically off of NFBC right now, most drafts going on. And, I just don't feel confident in it. I mean, the draft price is really where it's at. You have other guys going right before him, such as the, Marcus Semien's and, Ketel Marte that I could pay a couple rounds early for that I feel a little bit more confident in versus the question mark surrounding Jose Altuve, or waiting a little bit later and just getting whoever left over, like the Nico Horners, Luis Garcias, the Jackson Hollidays, Bryce Terangs, Steers, and the list goes on. It's just a matter of cost for me. Am I going to get the return on the pick? I'm not really sure, truthfully. And you know what, with the team not looking as bolsterous as it was in the past, with the loss of Bregman and the rest of those names that have just left that team over the last couple of years, just don't feel great. The situation isn't wonderful, and Altuve just isn't doing it for me as a guy that I just want to generally avoid. I have a weird feeling about him.
Yeah, man, I'll hop back in there and say, yeah, the decline's coming. Age 34, Father Time stays undefeated, and you kind of have seen it over the years. Altuve, he had that little resurgence. We thought maybe he was going to fall off a little bit, step back up, picked up the power over the years. And just when you kind of look at some of the underlying stuff, exit velocities down, hard hit rates down. Even the speed for Jose Altuve, for somebody back in the day who was a speedster, he doesn't even really, he did still 22 bags last year, but sprint speed in the 44th percentile, not loving that. And like I said, Kyle Tucker's not there anymore. Bregman's on his way out. Team's not looking as great for the counting stats. I'm kind of with you there. When you're paying the price of pick 58, when you're looking at NFBC ADP early, second baseman off the board, Matt, you nailed it. I'll wait at second base too. Don't want to pay that price. Frank, thoughts on Altuve?
I actually don't mind the price tag too much. I mean, he still went 2020 last season. He was one of 19 players to do that. He's hit 295 or better 3 years in a row. I totally understand fading him if you're just worried about the age. He's turning 35 in May. Really could just kind of fall off out of nowhere. These things could just happen fast with players at that age. So it wouldn't surprise me if that did happen. And he had an awesome April last season. And after that, a 738 OPS from May on. So this could be the start of the decline. But even with that, when you just look at his full season numbers, nearly hit 300, 2020, as I mentioned, I don't think the price tag is egregious. But if you're worried about the age, I can see why someone would want to fade him.
Fair enough. Very well said. I'll jump in here. I'll give my first bust of the episode. I'm kind of fading Williy Adamus. New first year, new team, always tough for guys to adjust for the most part. And then he's coming off a career year, and I'm not buying a lot of what we saw last year. 32 home runs, a career high, 112 RBIs, a monstrous number out of Adamus. The 21 steals tops his career high in steals, by over 10. 251 batting average last year, kind of around his career mark. So I don't see that as being, outrageous. But you know what? He goes over to the Giants. Giants weaker lineup than Milwaukee. I don't believe in the counting stats. And another guy, mentioned the career year in steals. Not really a speedster when it comes to stealing bags. The underlying stuff doesn't look great when it comes to speed for Adamus. And then once again, just the price isn't. I don't think it's super crazy, when you're looking at, ADP over the last 30 days. It's the 10th shortstop off the board, pick 80. Just kind of not where I'd want to pay for, shortstop, to be honest with you. I'm probably either going a little bit more higher end on shortstop, and then if not, I'm probably going to wait at least a little bit there. A couple guys coming off the board after him. You got McLean, you got Tovar in Colorado, young kid who had a big year. Anthony Volpe with the Yankees. Maybe he could take another step forward this year. So there is a little bit depth, when it comes to the shortstop position. Even you look at a guy like Mason Wynn, with the Cardinals, who had a really, really good year last year. I like him as well at the position. So I think shortstop is a little bit deeper than we think. I'm just not paying up for Williy Adamus this year.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at just the problem with the position as a whole, right? Like we did my mock draft yesterday, and you look at how fast shortstops come off the board, and it's like, okay, what do you feel comfortable with? Are you going top heavy or not? And if you're waiting around, I don't mind walking away with Williy Adamus and taking that career year upside, but ultimately too, like are you really also going to bank on Jackson Holiday and Jeremy Pena kind of doing their thing as well? I'm kind of not really saying he's going to be a bust. The price isn't atrocious, but I guess where I'm going with this is it's not the worst place for him, I guess, is where I'm pretty much going. I apologize.
Frank, if you want to jump in, brother, and give some thoughts on Williy Adamus.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys said it well. I don't think the price tag is egregious. I mean, he was a top 20 player in Roto last year. He was a top 15 hitter in head-to-head points leagues. And so, I mean, when you consider, okay, a top 20 player coming off that season, you're getting him at pick 72. It's not crazy, but, going from the Brewers to the Giants, it's a worse ballpark. It's a worse lineup to hit in as well. I typically avoid players the first year of that mega contract in a new city as well. It's just, there are data points to show, like, typically, that first year in a new place doesn't always work out the way that we expect it to. I think Williy Adamus' steamer projection on Fangraph is actually really fair. 241 batting average, 25 homers, 80 RBI, 14 steals. That's an okay player. It's solid. Is it worth the 72nd overall pick? Probably not. Maybe he's like closer to like pick 100, something like that. So I don't think it's crazy, but he's probably not someone I'm going to be targeting myself.
All right, and coming up next, we got another one of Frank's guys, but first we just got to hit that ad. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $250 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for your live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season even more unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And guys, you know what? We gotta make the playoff season. You gotta also make that $5 bet, that $5 bet count. So let's pretty much put our money where our mouth is, right? That Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen game coming up this weekend, I think is going to be a crazy over/under. So I think I just want to get in on there all the player parlays. Overs on Lamar Jackson rushing yards, over on Josh Allen's passing yards. Let's do anytime touchdown for Lamar Jackson. All these wonderful stuff is going to help you make your $5 bet count, and you'll end up with that $250. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. Honestly, this season, you don't want to miss our rankings and, end up losing out on, possibly winning your league. So we're going to provide you with all our rankings from, redraft, dynasty, so much more. Plus our sleeper breakout bust lists that are a little bit more extended than what we offer on this 30-minute podcast. So if you want to see who exactly Dom and I are avoiding, targeting, and all that wonderful stuff, check us out on there. Links in the description below. But without further ado, Frank, who we got up next?
So this is another one that kind of hurts because he was someone I was a big fan of last offseason. It's Jake Burger. And you know what? Who wants to talk bad about burgers, right? I mean, burgers are the best, right?
We all love burgers.
When it comes to Jake Burger, man, look, he's kind of a one-trick pony. He's really good at that one trick, and it's hitting home runs. He's got the quality of contact. He hits the ball hard. He's exit velocities, barrel rate. Everything is there for Jake Burger. He also sees a boost going from the Marlins over to the Rangers. It's obviously a much better ballpark, a much better lineup. We're hoping that the Rangers lineup could get back on track. Wyatt Langford had a big September. Some guys that were kind of duds last season, hoping that they bounce back. So I understand why there might be some enthusiasm around him, but all he does is hit home runs. Jake Burger is a bad defender. He does not get on base, and he's on a better team now. So if he gets off to a slow start like he did last season with the Marlins, I mean, his first half was dreadful, and then his July and August basically carried his entire season. If he gets off to a really bad start again on a good team, there's a chance that he starts to lose out on playing time. So I think the floor is lower than the ADP says, and it's not an egregious ADP. You know, he's going around pick 120. They're just players going after him that you could get later that I think could give comparable production or maybe even better production. So someone like Matt Chapman, Alex Bregman at the time of recording this, still a free agent. So we're waiting to see where he winds up. Detroit would be pretty bad landing spot for Alex Bregman, but Boston would be fantastic. Isaac Paredes, you know, since he got traded, I think his ADP is like 200. I might just take him straight up over Jake Berger, and he's going 80 picks later. Too. So, I like Jake Berger. The power is legit. I just don't think he does anything else. And, you know, to use like a top 125, top 150 pick on Jake Berger as the 10th third baseman off the board, it's just too rich for me. Completely agree.
I mean, you know, why waste it? You said it very well. Honestly, I can't add anything else.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I like Berger a little bit. You know, like you said, who likes burgers? And Frank, you know what? Chicks dig the long ball, right? You know what? Better park. I see the path where, you know, we know who he is, right? You know, and the price is a little bit high when even like, you know, we've been talking about Christian Encarnacion Strand on this podcast a lot too. He's somebody who's going a little bit later, you know, if the health looks right and everything in spring training. Another guy who's going after Berger that, you know, you could get and that could be really good. But like I said, I do see a path where, you know, you get 30 plus homers, RBIs could be good in that lineup. You know, you're going to get a 250 batting average. He's done it the last 2 years, which isn't killing you in today's day and age. And even if you're looking at the underlying stuff, they like him a little bit more at next batting average, like around 256. But we know what he does, and you know what? If you're paying that price for him, you better understand that's what you're getting for the Jake Berger at this point. Matt, we're back to you, brother. Another super interesting name here. One of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in the league last year, William Contreras on the bust list.
Yep. And it's not because I'm, you know, judging his talent, truthfully. Like, he is a fantastic baseball player and probably will, you know, not fully out bust, but you won't get the return on the pick. Ultimately, he's going off the board at pick 27, and that's way too rich. 27, and that's way too rich for my blood. You look at, you know, ultimately what players are going around him, and it's like, okay, do you really want to spend it on the positional eligibility, even if you're in a 2-catcher league, or try and go after like a, you know, a sub, not a sub, but like a where there's not as depth, where it's like the second baseman and things like that, where you can get guys at the same position for catcher that are going to perform and be, you know, pretty much okay down the stretch, whereas like you're going to miss out on the second basemen, you're going to miss out on the shortstops, or even just the outfield depth, because the talent drop off in terms of tiers go really quickly, especially early in the draft at those, you know, onesie or multiple positions like the outfield. Whereas I can make my living with the guys later in the draft at the position. So for me, it's just way too rich for my blood.
Matt, I'm with you there. I'm just not big on drafting catcher early. It's not for me. I've never really, you know, taken that strategy. You know, it just hasn't really been for me over the years. So I'm with you on that. I'm just not going to take Contreras there. And catcher's a very fickle position, you know. So just not doing it. Frank, I don't know if you're on board with us there, or if you're in on Contreras.
Yeah, I think it's a clean sweep. There's no doubt about the talent for William Contreras. He's finished as the top catcher in Roto each of the past 2 years. Top 2 catcher in head points each of those seasons as well. But this price tag, man, an early third round pick in a 12-team league, it feels like there's just a clear drop off in the hitters. Once you get past pick 24, Trey Turner and Freddie Freeman, then you start to get into Contreras, Jazz Chisholm, Ketel Marte, Jackson Merrill. It's just guys either that haven't done it before or just really being propped up to this high price tag that we haven't had to draft them this high ever before. So wanted to mention Adley Rutschman's ADP as the number 1 catcher last offseason was right around pick 50. So He's cut in half. I mean, this is a really, really high pick for someone like William Contreras, which again, I don't think any of us like doubt the talent or anything like that. It's just the opportunity cost of having to spend a late second or early third round pick on a catcher. So it's not going to be me either. I'll wait a little bit later on. I'll take his brother around pick 75.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, playing first base this season, I think there's a non-zero chance that Wilson Contreras could be the number 1 catcher in fantasy this season.
Definitely could be a cheat code at the position for sure. But with that being said, guys, we are going to move on to my next bust, and then we will finish up with each of our last after this quick break. And all right, folks, we are back, and I want to talk about my next bust. We're going to head over to the other side of New York, and we are going to talk about a Met here. We're going to talk about Mark Vientos. And this is just another guy that it's just the price for me, man. The price over, I got the last month pinned down over here on NFBC. 80 pick 87 for Mark Vientos, who just coming off 1 year. Yeah, the year was pretty good. But if we look at the year as a whole, the second half was pretty bad for Vientos. He played 60 games in the second half. He had 231 at-bats. He did have 15 home runs, but the walk-to-strikeout ratio took a big step back with 17 walks to 86 strikeouts, and he hit 247 over that time. Just really struggled down the stretch. The talent is there for, Vientos. I don't doubt that at all. But when, you have Jordan Westburg going after him, Junior Caminero, one of the top prospects in, all of baseball last year, Matt Chapman, who we talked about before, who had a strong year last year with the Giants, and just you can go on a couple more names after that. It's just really about the price. And, Vientos, I want to see it again from him. I want to see if he can make the adjustments back that were made to him. So let's see if he can get that done. But just the price, is really, really rich for my blood. So I'm going to be fading Mark Vientos this season.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the hype. I understand, the excitement around, the Mets in general with, the Juan Soto acquisition and them, Mark Vientos is an exciting young prospect. But, again, this is another, I think, overreaction and excitement boosting him up the rankings. If he was going outside of pick 120, I think I'd probably consider him. But at this price, there's names going around him that I would much rather have. Even Anthony Santander, who at this moment also hasn't signed yet, would much rather have him depending on his landing spot. Jordan Westburg at second and third. And, you can even, dip our toes into pitching with Hunter Green and Tanner Bybee going around in that area too. There's just better options in that round and around him versus Mark Vientos. So that's why I'm out.
Frank, if you want to give us your thoughts on Mark Vientos, my brother.
Yeah, I think he's a polarizing player. I think you can maybe ask 100 people and 50 will tell you that he's a bust and 50 will tell you he's a breakout. So, yeah, I think he's going to be polarizing this upcoming season. He technically already broke out, I guess, hit 27 home runs. He had an 837 OPS last season. But, man, some of these projections expect him to get even better. Steamer has this guy projected for 35 home runs this upcoming season, which is – it's not impossible, but it's –
the power is real. The power is real. I will say that. The power is definitely real.
He hits the ball hard. There's no doubt. He also strikes out a lot. He had a 30% strikeout rate, 78% zone contact, which is well below league average. And if you look from July on, his strikeout rate was 33%. So it got worse as the season went on. I think a lot of people remember the playoffs. That's the last thing in their mind. And he looked like a superstar. He had 5 home runs in 13 games. So maybe that's factoring in a little bit here as well. But yeah, I do worry about the strikeouts. I worry about the plate discipline. I'll pass. I'll take Jordan Westburg, and maybe it's not fair to take Junior Caminero because we haven't really seen him do anything yet, but he is a higher prospect, and he's expected to hit for better batting average as well. So yeah, I would take both of those guys straight up over Vientos, and they're going behind him right now.
All right, let's move into our last round of bust here, and Frank, we'll start off with you once again, brother. And I see you got Robert Suarez up on the board there. Why don't we talk about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make a pretty easy bust case for any closer in fantasy baseball just because there's so much volatility. There's so much turnover at the position year over year. And he had an awesome season, Robert Suarez. There's no doubt. 277 ERA, 105 whip, 36 saves were 4th most in baseball. But he's not a big strikeout pitcher. He's under a strikeout per inning. And he's so fastball reliant. He threw his 4-seam fastball 71% of the time last season. I think hitters might have started to figure him out a little bit, maybe a little bit too predictable. In the second half, Robert Suarez took a step back. He had an ERA over 4. He had a 124 whip. The Padres have other talented relievers as well. They have Jason Adam. They have Jeremiah Estrada in that bullpen. And we've already heard whispers multiple times this offseason that the Padres are shopping Robert Suarez. So I wonder if maybe they're looking to sell high on him. They're trying to cut payroll. So, I mean, if he goes to a legit team, is he even the next team's closer? Like, is he a setup man? Is he a close? So there's some moving parts right now with Robert Suarez. I didn't love what I saw in the second half, and closers in general are just a little bit too volatile. So yeah, any closer that I could find something wrong with, I'm just going to stay away. And right now, Robert Suarez is a top 10 closer going inside the top 80 picks that's going to be a pass for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Frank. I can't do it for Suarez. And you know what? He's going to be 34 this upcoming year, a guy who's aging a bit. And, the underlying stuff doesn't love a lot of the stuff he doesn't, get a lot of whiffs. As you said, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, not a lot of ground balls, a lot of hard hits. Just not a profile that you really love to see in a closer. And you nailed it. I switched up ADP here. I went over to Fantasy Pros for this one because it's a little bit tough to sort for closers on NFBC. Robert Suarez, 9th closer off the board, and you have Andres Munoz and Johan Duran right after him. I'll take both of them over him. I like both of those young closers. I think they're both going to have good seasons. So I'm out on Suarez as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you guys just took everything I had to say, and well done. Great minds think alike. But
of course,
I mean, you know what? Like the last thing I say is, it's a fair point. Like if he gets moved, he could get Tanner Scott, and then one of the most valuable closers in baseball could probably go. And not saying he's the most valuable closer, but ultimately that's the scenario. So if you're going to waste a pick in the top 100 on a closer, it's not going to be him. I'd rather way better names going after him, like Duran and such. So yeah.
All right, Matt. You're right back up at it, brother. Your last bust here. Let's talk some Yainer Diaz, actually another catcher here. So let's go for it.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of sticks to the same point. Like I just can't believe the ADP that's going on with catchers as a whole. I understand too, like he has first base eligibility and things like that. But you look at another thing that guys going around him. You got Ozzy Albies, which again I was talking about positional scarcity at second base. You got the Garrett Coles, you got the Felix Batistas, Adley Rutschman's, who's a little bit better, and I still wouldn't draft him there. And you just keep going down, and the Marcel Zunas a little bit later, the Kyle Schwarbers. There's just too many names to go around where I don't think Diaz is going to return on that pick either. He had a good year, but you're going to draft a guy that the runs upside is 70 last year, and then you have 84 ribs, and to only have 16 home runs, and he bats 299 and things like that, but he's not really getting the job done in terms of the counting stats. So you're playing in a roto and things like that. And even you go and you look at the points leagues, the only thing is really he gets a little bit of a bump is because of the doubles and triple aspect of it. But he strikes out enough to be a negative factor even there. So for me, the price is just a little too much for me and Yainer Diaz as a whole. And I'm out. Again, if you can't tell the theme of my two busts, I'm out on top 100 catchers as a whole.
Yeah, Matt, I think you nailed it. I'm not even going to waste any more time on there. I think we're fading a lot of those early catchers, and we're going to attack positions that are going to be more valuable at that time in the draft. So I'm not going to be drafting much Yainer Diaz at that price myself. Frank, how about you, brother?
Yeah, this one's a little bit tougher because I like the player generally, but it is a big price tag for him, man. He's 26 years old on opening day. He's entering his prime. He was just the 4th best catcher in fantasy. He got off to a really slow start, but if you look from June on, he hit 324, 13 home runs, 830 OPS. If he raises his launch angle, puts the ball in the air more, I think he could be the top catcher in fantasy. I think there's a path to that happening where he could hit like 285 with 25 home runs, something like that in the middle of that Astros lineup. But the ADP at 57, he's the 2nd catcher off the board. He's going ahead of Adley. He's going 20 picks ahead of Salvador Perez, who is really, really proven as well. I like the player, but I don't like the price tag. So I don't see myself having a lot of Yainer Diaz this year as well.
All right, folks, so we're going to move into this last name here, my last bust, and it's Marcus Semien of those Texas Rangers. We're talking about Texas, a little bit earlier, and I do project that team to be a little bit better, coming into 2025. We got a lot of those young bats and the Langfords, and just the rest of that team should take a step forward. But I think Semien might be the one player that might take a step back. Another player going into his age 34 season, took a step back last year in a lot of departments. The batting average came down all the way to 237, lost a bit of that pop, down to 23 home runs, took a step down in the RBI department, down to 74. Runs still look really good. Can't hate on him in the runs department, and he still should hit in a really good spot in that lineup. So the runs should be all right, but when you're looking at Semien still coming off the board as around, the 4th second baseman, around pick 86 over the last month, according to NFBC ADP, it's just not for me. I'll take the young Jordan Westburg going, almost 10 picks later. I like Luis Garcia, Terang. I even like to take a shot on a guy like Luis Rengifo, who could put up very similar type numbers, maybe not in the counting stat departments because the Angels aren't going to be a very good team. But you know what? A guy who's got some pop speed and could hit for a way better batting average. I'm not paying the price for Marcus Semien this year. I think Father Time's starting to catch up to him.
Yeah, I will say this, and then I'm going to leave it off to Frank. But, the one thing that's kind of always been his saving grace is launch angle, and that kind of is what always got it over the fence. He's never been an exit velocity guy. He's never really crushed the ball. Even the hard contact percentage was never really off the charts. So with that, I seen the decrease and things like that. And, with the age, that's where I'm kind of backing out. The price is just a little too much. So if he could fall, it might change my perspective. But right now, today, I can't.
And then, Frank, if you want to give us some closing thoughts here on Mr. Marcus Semien.
Yeah, what do you guys have against older second baseman, man? What's going on?
I don't know, Frank. I'll be honest with you. Now that you pointed it out, I might have to look into it. It might be a personal thing that we have to look into a little bit over here. But I don't know. I just think the price not right this year.
Yeah. What's coming is a class on ageism. That's what's coming next.
Look, I don't know. I don't know how old you guys are. We'll talk about it, I guess, after the podcast ends.
I'm not much younger than him.
We might all be in similar age ranges here. But the point is, you guys were fading Altuve. You're fading Marcus Semien. I totally get, like, if you're scared about the age, it makes sense to fade someone who's entering his age 34 season. And the speed has declined. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Like, the sprint speed is still there, but for some reason, the steals have just taken a step back. So if you're getting less than 10 steals from your second baseman and you're using a top 100 pick, I get why you would want to do that. The weird part about Marcus Semien's down season was, if you look under the hood, I don't really see anything that was that different than previous years. Plate discipline is still really good. He doesn't typically hit the ball hard, but he pulls the ball in the air so he can get the most out of his skill set. I still expect him to hit 250 with 25-ish home runs, and he's fast enough where I think the speed could bounce back. Like, can he get back to 12 to 15 steals? If he does that and he scores 100 runs again, like he always does, like, I actually kind of think he's a value at this ADP. But on the other side of it, again, like, if you're just worried about the age and the speed declining, then I totally understand fading him. I actually kind of think the price tag is okay. Sorry to say, guys.
Oh, fair enough, man. That's why we do this, though, and that's what we always say here. We do these kinds of exercises to pick each other's brain, to gain knowledge, and to share it with everybody. But just to wrap things and put a bow on it, Frank, thank you so much for doing this. We truly appreciate you taking the time and being here with us today. But guys, that is all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And shout out to all of our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And after you make us your first listen, go and check out our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB and make him your second listen each and every day. But guys, until next time, see ya.
Peace.